What's going on, guys, and welcome to Who to Sign For. Now in this series I'm giving you my recommendations on what players to sign for a specific team in career mode. But before we go on, I will say that the signings you'll see aren't designed to be realistic, which is very important, and that the player ratings and potentials may vary depending on what database you're using and how they perform for you during the season. You don't have to follow all the tips. This is really just a set of guidelines to give you a hand if you're stuck for ideas and want some suggestions on what players you could sign for a certain club. This is mainly aimed at those of you out there who may be new to the game and just want some help, or for those of you out there who may be stuck for ideas on what players you could sign for a certain team in career mode. So in today's episode of Who to Sign For, guys, we are going to take a look at the French side Nice. Yes, OGC Nice to be precise, from the south of France in Ligue 1. Last season they finished in 3rd place in France's top tier, which means they're going into a Champions League qualifier for next season, which is absolutely fantastic. A really good finish for Nice last year, and I think this will be a team that a lot of you guys will want to try out next season. They're of course in a top European league, and with them being in the Champions League next season, of course subject to a qualifier, I'm sure this is a side that a lot of you guys will want to check out next season, and they might possibly get their real stadium in the game as well due to them qualifying for the Champions League. That's the Allianz Riviera. It's not obviously guaranteed, it doesn't happen all the time, but it'll be good if they did put the stadium in the game next year for them qualifying for the Champions League, because you know the more real stadiums the better, as I'm sure every single CM player agrees with me on that one. Now their objectives in the first season are to finish in a Champions League spot, just like in real life, to finish in the top 3, to reach the round of 16 in the Coupe Nationale, and also reached Europa League final. They have got a £7 million budget, a £7.1 million budget though, so that's very, very low for a 4.5-star team, which Nice is. I must say that was quite surprisingly low for me. But their team is really, really decent. It is a 4.5-star team, as I just said there, and this is a really great team. There are only 2 players in this Nice side who are 30 years old plus. One is Obadi, who you just saw there, who you're expected to sell in the first season, as his contract's up come the end of the year, and you certainly don't need to give him a new one, he's not even in the first 11 right now. And the other one is Dante, who's literally just joined the club. So this is a really, really youthful team. There are tons of players in this side with low to mid 80 potential. This is without question a side that is definitely worth doing a career mode with. There is just so much young talent here, and this is sort of like one of the more sort of like not hidden gems per se. Of course, they finished in the top 3 in the Ligue 1 last season, but it's a team which I think a lot of people would be surprised to know just how much young talent they have if they don't know that much about French football and European football in general. So yeah, Nice definitely a career mode team. I'd recommend that, no doubt, for that reason alone. Now, as you can see, the team lineup, how I got it set up in the 4-2-3-1. They have a few players, their contracts are coming at the end of the year. There's only one player I give a contract to, and that is Valentin Iseric. He is a cam that can also play out wide as well. He's only 24 years old. He's got low 80 full potential. He is certainly a player that deserves a new contract. He won't cost you much to keep here. You might want to give one to Bossetti, who is a 23-year-old striker. He's got 75 potential. Now that's not bad, but with Balotelli in your side, with Player in your side as well, he's never really going to be in the first 11, and he'll barely ever get on the bench when he's hit his peak. So to me, I just recommend selling him in the first season, or keeping him and letting his contract run down, or if you want, see how he does in the first season and then give him a contract come the end of the year, depending on his performance. That's totally up to you, but for me personally, I'd probably recommend selling him as soon as possible for a little bit of scratch. Now, as for sales and as for signings, where would I go with Nice? Well, as you'll see, I do sell a few players in this episode. The one thing I'd want to say is this though. One total idiot thing I forgot is that this side with the Europa League, with 2 cup competitions in the Coupe Nationale and the Coupe de Ligue, and 38 games in the league season, I totally forgot that, you know, you need depth in this side. So I kind of messed up a little bit with this and sold a few too many players. But for signings anyway, what I'd recommend is looking for a new wide midfielder. Now, right now, of course, they have Iseric playing on the left-hand side. They have Pereira, who's actually naturally listed as a right-back primarily in the game, playing on the right side of midfield. They don't really have that much depth in the wide areas for midfield. I would recommend signing a new one, and my new wide midfielder slash winger recommendation with this guy right here, Henry Onyekuru, who I've yet to try in FIFA 17, but I've heard nothing but good things. He's absolutely rapid, 19 years old, and he starts off at 75 overall with 87 potential. potential. And one of the best things about Onyekuru as well is that he's got high work rates. And if you're someone that plays a really adventurous style of play, bombs players like the pitch, fullbacks included as well, you're going to want wide midfielders that track back, and Onyekuru will with those high work rates. So he's definitely worth picking up in my opinion. He won't cost you that much over his valuation. We got him for £6.5 million. And one of the best things about Onyekuru is that his salary is really low as well. When you are managing a team like Nice, who have a really small budget, again, £7.1 million is basically nothing for a top tier side who are looking to finish in the top 3 of the division. You need to make sure you make your money worse. Make your money worse. Make your money work. You don't just spend all your cash on one player of a really bloated salary. You do everything you can to stretch out those pound coins and make sure that you get the best value for money. And Henry Onyekuru is certainly good value for money. Got some really great stats. Physically so good. Despite 44 strength, he's got so good pace stats. He's got high stamina as well, 72 to begin with. That's not too bad. Onyekuru for me is without question the first sign I'd recommend going in for. He's low salary, he's low cost, and he's got high potential. He's exactly what you want from a signing for a Nice career mode. But as for selling more players as well, I did sell one of the 2 players that are 30 plus overall. That is Munir Obadi to EA Guingamp for £2.3 million. He's a decent little player, mid-70s overall to begin with, but again, in his 30s right now, he's just going to decrease in the first season. You may as well get what cash you can for him in the first year and let him go. And as for more sales as well, this was quite interesting, but I sold 2 centre-backs here with Nice. They were actually quite decent, mid to high 70 rated. Those players were Paul Bass, who went to Lyon for £7 million, and also Lay Marchand as well. Both of those players are mid to high 70s overall. Bass is 78 rated and Lay Marchand is 76 rated. Now, they're both in their mid-20s, so they are totally, good enough to stay in the first team and not decrease in the first 2 to 3 years. So if you want to keep them, that's totally fine. But one of the luxuries with Nice is that they've got 2 really great young centre-backs waiting to fill in once those players go. Those 2 centre-backs are Boscagli, who has 82 potential, and of course the big one, who I'm sure you guys are already familiar with if you play career mode this year, Malang Sarr, who has got 88 potential. He becomes one of the best centre-backs in the game when he hits his peak. So, in my opinion, those 2 centre-backs there, they're very good in the first team right now, but I'd recommend selling them both, bringing in a new centre-back for the first season to play alongside Dante, and then have Sarr and Boscagli as your 2 other centre-backs to come through as the years go by. We also put in a bid for Kasper Dolberg as well. He was the second signing I tried to complete. We had about £15 million in the budget at this rate after the sale of base of £7 million to Lyon, and I tried to sign Kasper Dolberg. Now, you might wonder why that is, because obviously Nice play over 1 striker formation, and right now Mario Balotelli is their current lone striker in the game, in the tactics layout, if you will, when you start the game up. And of course, I never changed the formation, just work with the one the game gives me. The reason being is quite simple. Player would normally be on the bench if you stuck with the original lineup the game gives you, but instead I'd recommend putting Pereira, who is actually naturally a right back by trade according to the game, with right back listed as first position. I'll put him back to the right back role. I'll put Player on the right side of midfield, as he can play down the right flank, and have Balotelli as your lone striker still, which means you don't have much in way of good first team quality on the bench for the striker role, which is why Kasper Dolberg would be the ideal backup striker for Nice. He'll cost you a couple million over his valuation, around 11 to 12 million pounds. We got him for 11 million pounds, and of course, with Nice having quite a low budget, you might think it's a lot to spend on a backup striker, but he's definitely worth it. 77 rated to begin with, just 18 years old, and with 88 potential as well. This guy becomes one of the best strikers in the game when he hits his peak, and he's already got some great traits to begin with as well, such as power forward, and I think he's got the outside foot shot as well, which I really like too, for a bit more accuracy when shooting from the opposite side of his preferred foot. From the same side of his preferred foot and going across the goalkeeper. He's got some really great stats already. He's already really strong at just 18. Physically, a great young striker to have. And in my opinion, when a player is 77 rated, just 18 years old, 88 potential, I think £11 million is the right type of fee to put on the guy. He's got some really great, well-rounded physical stats to begin with. Already 78 finishing, 84 shot power as well. That's his standout stat from the technicals. He looks absolutely amazing. Flair trait, 4-star weak foot, already 6'2". He's just a brilliant young striker, and without question, a player I'd recommend for the bench in the first season, or if you want, throw him into the first 11, put Balotelli on the bench show him who's boss, and see what we can do in the first year. But for me, I'd have him coming off the bench in the first season and gradually ease him into the first 11 as Balotelli eventually will get worse for wear at some point as the years go by. Now, for the third and final signing I managed to complete with Nice, I decided to go in for a new centre-back. Now, of course, I did discuss a few moments ago there, they do indeed have Boscagli and, of course, the big one, Sarr, with 88 potential waiting in the wings. Now, if you want, you can throw one of those two centre-backs in the first 11 right now, but for me, I would recommend a better one to come in and play alongside Dante in the first season, and it'll be this guy right here, Victor Nilsson Lindelof, who's actually just signed for Manchester United in real life. He is a Swedish centre-half currently playing, well, in the game, still currently playing for Benfica, but of course now moving to Old Trafford in real life. He won't cost you much over his valuation either, about £11.5 million, that's what we got him for, which is $1 million over his valuation. He's 22 years old, 79 rated, and one of the key things you'll be noticing here with the signings I'm making is that none of them are going to cost us more than 15 grand a week. And when you're bringing in players that are mid to high 70 rated with high 80 potential, Nilsson Lindelof has 86 potential, 15 grand a week on a 5-year deal is absolutely nothing. So when I said earlier about making your money work, stretching the pound out, this is exactly what I mean. The signings we're bringing in aren't just good enough to go in the first team, either in the first 11 or on the bench, but they're also going to restructure your wage bill here with Nice as well, and it's going to look far cheaper and far more prosperous for the future. So Lindelof, definitely the third sign I recommend. He'll play alongside Dante in the first season, and those two will be a great CB duo. And as the years go by and when Dante gets worse, you can have Sarr in the first 11 alongside Nilsson Lindelof with 88 and 86 potential as your CB duo, and Boscagli on the bench as well. How appealing would that be for 3 CBs in your team as the seasons go by? So in the end, we spent £29 million on 3 players, quite expensive, I must say. And with Nice starting with a £7.1 million budget, we of course spent the bulk of it and had to raise cash by selling quite a lot of, I wouldn't say deadwood players, but players who, you know, weren't going to be in the Nice team for more than 2 or 3 years at best. And this is a really, really decent young team, as I said, but I did allude to it quite briefly earlier. The one thing I totally forgot was how many games Nice were expected to play this season. With the Coupe Nationale and the Coupe de Ligue, 2 domestic cups, 38 games in a league season, and also the Europa League as well. Plenty of games to come for Nice. We didn't have much in the way of a in-depth squad, and that's why I wasn't really surprised to see I failed the league objective with my young team. They finished 2 places below what they did in real life, and they finished in 5th place, which is a Europa League spot, with 61 points from 38 games, 16 wins, 13 draws, and 9 defeats. And that was a bit of a failure. Of course, we were supposed to finish in the top 3, just like in real life, so to finish in 5th, that was a failure, no doubt about it, I won't deny it, but they actually exceeded the cup objective and won some silverware in the first season. In the Coupe Nationale, they were supposed to reach the round of 16, they ended up winning it, which is fantastic. So they won the Coupe Nationale, got some silverware, reached the semi-finals of the Coupe de Ligue, which doesn't really matter, but I thought I'd show it regardless, before losing to the eventual finalist Lyon. And in the Europa League, that was sadly another failure though. So the cup was a success, but the league was league and Europa League were failures. In the Europa League, they got out of their group, they topped it by finishing with 14 points from 6 games. However, they were knocked out in the round of 32 stage by the Swiss side FC Basel. So I exceeded the cup objective and got some silver in the first season, which is fantastic, but I did fail the Europa League objective quite severely. They were supposed to reach the final, which I should say is a very tough aim, a very, very tough aim in the first season, reached the Europa League final, and I also failed the league as well by finishing outside the Champions League places in 5th place. But despite that, as you will see, I was surprised to know I did manage to keep my job at the end of the season, which was a real surprise. I think winning the cup just about kept my job for a second season. But if I didn't win it, I'm almost certain I would have got the sack. I certainly didn't do the best of jobs with this one. But having said that, I would probably still say that the 3 signings I brought in would be recommended regardless, because these are all really decent players for the future. And if you trust your ability, I would certainly recommend going with the method I showed you in today's episode, and that is bringing in 3 good young players with mid to high 80 potential, selling on some players that aren't going to be great for the future, and also just nurturing the young talents Nice have already. Otherwise, if you're not that confident, maybe just make one of those 3 signings today, Dolberg, Onyekuru, and Nilsson, and then forget about the other 2. Just make one signing for an already decent team at 4.5 star, and work with what you got, and then go for better signs in the second season when hopefully you've got a bigger and a better budget. But regardless, Nice is without question a side that I'll definitely recommend for a career mode. Again, so much young talent, so many young players with mid-80 potential. This is a really, really fun team. Of course, based in the south of France, Nice. It's a lovely, lovely city. And again, hopefully next season get a real stadium in the game as well. That will be fantastic. I'm sure you guys will check them out next season. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the tips today, and I would certainly recommend this team for a career mode, no doubt. This is without question one of the funnest and best young teams in a top European side, which isn't one of the more mainstream sides as well. But thanks for watching, guys. Have a fantastic weekend. If you enjoyed the video, then please do leave a like, and I'll see you for the next episode of Who to Sign For very soon.